And now to our first conversation. With rising costs of energy, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria have asked the federal government to issue its members licenses to import diesel from the Republic of Niger and Chad, Nigeria's neighboring countries, in order to avert the avoidable paralysis of manufacturing activities that could arise from a total shutdown of production operations. Let's hear more now from the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadir. Join us right here on Business Morning. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so quite a demand from your association regarding importing diesel yourselves and getting the licenses. How exactly is that supposed to work?
Well, thank you again. Ordinarily, as manufacturers, we shouldn't be talking about importing diesel because it's not our raw material. It's neither a machine nor a spare. But we have come to a situation where after 3 months of high prohibitive and unimaginably high cost of diesel, we are left with no choice than to seek rather absurd measures to push back at an imminent collapse. What we have seen in recent times is the fact that an average manufacturing industry can no longer operate 3 shifts. They have cut down to 1 shift. And even when they are able to run, they are now producing at a cost that they cannot sell. And don't forget that during this time, you are also paying salary. So we feel that what would be best to reduce the cost at which we purchase diesel is to seek to have a license to import. Now, this is, like I've said, a measure among several that we have proposed to government, both in writing and through the media. So we are only expecting that this consideration should be, due consideration should be given to all the suggestions that we have made. This only being one of it. There are several others.
Yeah, quite a number of suggestions there. But is this sustainable for your members to actually import, coupled with your production activities?
It is not. I mean, it is not. We do not intend to do that. We don't need the licenses. We just want to manufacture. The only thing we want to import is our raw materials, our machines, and spares. That's all. But now what do? At the first quarter of the year, you are buying diesel for 200 naira per liter or 250 naira per liter. Now it is 820. And nobody will even allow you to have it and pay later when you have made sales. When you consider that 80% of our members are small and medium-scale industries, where are they going to get the money? Meanwhile, at the same time, you are getting forex to import your raw materials at rates that were unimaginable. Nobody expected this when they were making the projections for year 2022. We thought that we were going to recover from COVID, we are going to recover from the global logistics challenge and try to put things together. But here we are, 2022, we just finished the second quarter, and we are worse than we were even in 2020.
And it's quite interesting, even at 200 naira per liter, some were still struggling, with that price, because of what we're seeing now. But what do you think the government can do at this point to create a buffer for, manufacturers with this high cost of diesel?
Yes, thank you very much. We have asked the government to immediately introduce what we term as the National Response and Sustainability Strategy. Because what is being blamed now is the Ukraine and Russian war. Okay. If that is it, then we need to create a strategy to beat back these challenges that we are having. I mean, we can't say because there's war between 2 countries, our productive industry should shut down. So government has to engage the private sector on how we can wind down on this cost, because it all boils down to the cost of doing business. And there are so many areas of pain points. There are so many pain points. For instance, we actually do not have any business buying diesel if we had power. So one would have expected that in this conversation, we'll be able to tell government precisely, and people enter into an agreement with government and all the agencies that are responsible about what we can do to get power more adequately. Then the issue of making it difficult for manufacturers to access the eligible customer scheme should be removed completely. So that will bring down the cost of production. It will mean that we will buy less of the diesel that is so expensive because diesel is deregulated. So you cannot be asking for subsidies, and we have never supported subsidizing a commercial product. But the truth of it is that it is becoming a national tragedy, and government needs to take immediate steps. Our members may no longer be able to pay people for doing nothing. We have had to bear this in the first 2 quarters, more especially in the last quarter of the year. Going forward, a lot of members are going to shut their gates because it's no longer profitable for you to produce. You cannot produce, and you are keeping staff. Now, the security situation in Nigeria. We cannot afford to turn all these workers to the streets. The schools are on strike. If we shut our doors, we are just swelling the ranks of those who will become security risks. So I think this should be a national emergency for government to realize that it is one suffering that has gone on for too long. And I think the manufacturing sector demands a ranking consideration in this at this time. That's the essence of the message. Yes.
Right. And talking about the government, what has been their response so far to your demands?
Unfortunately, it has not been to the level that we expect. I mean, probably because they have not seen, we can't go on the streets. We are an advocacy group, and we continue to engage government, and we have several platforms for engaging government, and we are doing so. But the worry we have now is that the response is coming too slowly. And there are several other areas that we had expected that at times like this, our government will consider. I mean, for instance, we have the issue of the increase in excise. This is just the time not to do so. I mean, we are finding it difficult to sell because of rising costs. So we are expecting that government will there are low-hanging fruits that government can embark upon that will reduce the pressure that is on the manufacturing sector. One would have expected that all the increases in excise as part of the measures that government is taking to roll back the challenges we are having is to suspend them and to give us a time to recover, to even have a conversation with us as the taxes that we can have rates on taxes. The power sector, like I've said, that NEC and the DISCOs should allow to remove the setbacks that we're having in assessing the eligible customer scheme, and that all the regulatory agencies should slow down on the compliance charges that is becoming a challenge. Also at the port, it takes us about 3 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks to clear our goods. And that is another area that government can look at. So I think if we have a dialogue, we can identify those pain points that we can immediately wind down so that we'll be able to have some breather. It is just becoming quite unbearable for some of our members. And from the questionnaire that we have sent out, it is likely that we'll be recording the worst quarter in a long time that we are experiencing.
And looking at alternative energy sources, an analyst suggested that manufacturers could, switch over to gas-powered plants. How do you think that's going to work?
Well, I think it's a viable option, and so many of our members are doing that, particularly the multinationals and the big industry. But you also know that, like I told you, 80% of our members are small and medium-scale industry. And conversion, the cost of conversion, I mean, where are you going to get it? If you are lucky, you get interest you get loan at 22% or 20%. But we have said that if you give a manufacturer any loan facility and you are charging more than 5%, you are not helping. It's just going to work for the bank. So there has to be that cost for conversion. And like I have said before, it is a lot easier for one to just imagine that you switch to alternative source of power. But there is a cost content. and there is the adequacy of gas itself that is being supplied. I mean, I visited a member company, I think about a month and a half ago in Ibadan. And while I arrived there, he was conducting me around. He showed me that where the agent that is selling him gas has increased it by 25%. And he did his cost analysis. There's no way he will put 15% on his goods that he's selling. Nobody will buy, because the ones that are being imported, apart from the fact that there's an influx and the company makes detergent, it will become cheaper. So that in itself also has its own challenge.
So we still have cost.
Yes.
Yeah, we still have cost implications for other alternatives, at this point. But say your members don't get the license to actually import diesel, what next?
No, I think that like I said, it's just one of the options. We'll continue conversation, even with those that are major marketers, for us to be able to have some leeway. I mean, for instance, the 5% VAT on diesel to be immediately removed. I mean, so that we'll be able to have access. But at the same time, we know that there's a limit to which our conversation with the marketers can go. You can't ask anybody to sell to you below the cost price. I mean, that's a basic realization that we have. So in engaging, and that's why when we sit together with government and the marketers and all the major stakeholders, we'll be able to identify what can be done to bring down the price of diesel. Or, and simultaneously, for us to be able to have areas where our pain points can be reduced.
Right, and talking about other options, can you identify those other options you have available for manufacturers?
Well, for instance, all the stimulus packages that we had with the CBN, for instance, that manufacturers are supposed to assess, and for us to be able to have facilities at lower rate, they should immediately be activated. Because by the admission of the central bank governor himself, where about 1 trillion was only 30% of it had been taken by manufacturers. So we need to remove the bottleneck, the bureaucratic bottleneck that has made it impossible for us to access. That is one area where we'll be able to have some relief for the manufacturer. At the same time, we can have government squarely addressing the issue at the ports. Even for us to export, it's becoming almost more difficult for us to export than to import. If it will cost you the same amount to take a 40-foot container from Singapore to Lagos than to take it from Lagos to Agbara, then it becomes a major issue. So government should remove that. What we are saying actually is the fact that diesel in itself is not a raw material, okay? And that if we have more power, so the best alternative is for government to ensure that we have reasonable supply of power. A situation where the national grid has collapsed 2 or 3 times or more during the course of the year should be addressed. And the opportunity for manufacturers to get power at lower cost and more regularly, which has come in the form of the eligible customer scheme, should be allowed to work. If we do all of this, the pressure on the manufacturing sector will actually continue to wind down. And then we'll be able to have a conversation around how that national strategy of, it's not only manufacturing sector alone, other sectors of the economy are suffering. Even the people are suffering because our products are going to come out far more expensive than it would have been. So a national strategy should be able to address it in a holistic manner, such that we'll be able to have relief for manufacturers, we'll be able to have relief for the workers and the generality of Nigeria. That we don't have any such initiative from government, requires that we demand for it, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Right. The impact is indeed far-reaching, and I hope your members and the government can actually reach consensus soon so that things do not break down. Thank you so much, Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadare, Director General, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, after the break, the conversation continues. Sri Lanka struggles with economic woes. What can other countries learn from this? That's our next conversation. Do stay with us.